Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
From sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Recover You. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Kylene.
Feels like forever.
Yep.
Actually, it just feels like 30 seconds ago. This is take 2.
Yeah.
Coco decided within the first 30 seconds of us recording to vomit.
Yep. So that was fun.
But we're back.
Yeah, here we are. So it's been forever or 3 weeks? One of the two.
Yeah, because we pre-recorded a bunch and then I went on the longest trip in the history of forever.
Yep.
And now I'm back.
Now we're back.
And you're about to abandon me with a lot of work travel.
Yep.
And then you'll be back?
Yeah.
All right, but we're going to make it work.
Yeah.
Okay.
We will.
So today we are going to talk about this idea of creating the life that we want after recovery, stepping into the version of ourselves that we want, changing patterns and habits that we have. How do we stop them and how do we create new healthy habits? And what we're going to sort of focus on, the last episode that you listened to was with Tyler Patrick. Mm-hmm. And I thought he did a great job. I really enjoyed that episode. And one of the things that his methodology sort of focuses on, and I totally agree with, is the idea of sort of moving so far past and beyond the idea of sobriety, right? Beyond this idea of, let me focus on stopping the behavior. And he was really sort of describing how it's deeper than that. It's how do I step into the version of myself that I'm going to feel really good about. Mm-hmm. So we're going to talk a little bit about that concept today in maybe different language. And the idea of when we are trying to stop something or add something into our life or change a pattern or invite something into our life that's good for us or any of those things, how do we do it? Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about this idea of crowding out the bad, not by focusing super hard on it, but by filling our lives with the good.
Yeah.
And so I think this idea of hyperfixation on the thing that we don't want is kind of where our brains would naturally go, but then it turns into sort of the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Don't think about it, 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 right? Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Now we don't want to do it, right?
Right.
But yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today.
Awesome. I'm excited.
So we can talk, let's start with like a sort of non-betrayal, non-addiction example, because I really do think a lot of what we talk about in the podcast has to do with human nature, human patterning, how the brain works, and just how to become a healthy human, even if you don't struggle with these things, even if you're not in the midst of trauma. It's just, I want to add, I want to become someone that can run a 5K, or I want to stop eating ice cream every night, or, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, different things have different consequences and different impacts in our life. But the way the brain works and the way we're successful at doing things is pretty much the same across the board.
Right.
So let's start with just the idea of maybe just the one I just said. Like maybe I want to stop eating ice cream.
Yep.
I'm going to use that as an example because I love ice cream. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of times in the summer, I could pretty much eat ice cream.
Have it every day.
Like every day. Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So let's say that at some point in my life, I decide that that's a problem. It's not today, by the way. But at some point,
there may be some ice cream in your future.
At some point, maybe I decide that that's a problem for me.
Yeah.
Or I want to do it less, or whatever. Maybe that's my goal. Okay, for whatever reason. And so here are the 3 things that I'm going to kind of talk about in terms of how to do this, regardless of the example that we offer. 1, we want to identify the thing that we want to change. Okay, so I want to eat less or no ice cream. Okay. Well, in order to do that, I'm going to have to figure out, what does the ice cream give me, right? Like, how does the ice cream make me feel? Why is it that I go to ice cream all the time? Well, it makes me happy, right? Maybe it brings a feeling of calmness,
Right.
or a feeling of joy, or those are the words that come to mind. Like I just, be like, it's just like not like alcohol calm where it like does something to your body. It's just like
maybe it's refreshing. Maybe you feel refreshed
Yes.
at the end of the day because something cold and tasty and sugary.
Yeah, it feels like a treat,
That's right. Yep.
Okay, so if I wanted for some reason to get rid of that, I would need to I know what it offers me. It offers me joy, refreshment, feels like a treat, right? So those are important things to kind of note within myself. Is there anything within my body that it feels a certain way, that sort of thing. So then what I would want to do is I would want to find a replacement that in some way offers me the same things that have a positive benefit or even a better benefit than what I'm getting. So like neutral to positive or even better is what you want to then replace the thing with, right?
Yeah.
So something that's going to make me feel a little bit of joy, a little bit like it's a treat, a little refreshing, right? So here's an example. Last year, I believe it was last year, when I started practicing making mocktails, and they're very refreshing. I was like really obsessed with them for like a couple months because you would keep fresh herbs in the house, and you'd have like the sparkling water. You'd grind up the fresh raspberries or whatever, blueberries or strawberries. You'd add some simple syrup. It was just very, very refreshing. So that actually, when you use that word, that comes to mind, right? So that would be an example of, oh, well, maybe I would do that instead. Okay, if I don't want the ice cream, or maybe it's a calorie thing. Maybe I'm trying to say I don't want the ice cream because it just doesn't help me in that area. Well, maybe the mocktail is like less calories, for example, but it offers me the same benefit. Okay, so it's a silly example because obviously you can eat ice cream. It's not going to kill you. It's not destroying families and relationships. But sometimes we have little goals like that, and the patterning of how you're going to be successful with something is still the same.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think is when you're talking about identifying what it's doing for you, and then what is a good safe alternative. So in the idea of the ice cream, maybe you are having a slight health issue, right? And ice cream in and of itself is not going to destroy families.
Maybe I learned I have dairy issues.
Yeah, right. So, a good possible replacement is you have fresh fruit that you put in the refrigerator and then you sprinkle some honey on it, right? And so you still get that refreshing feeling in the, at the end of the day. It gives you a little bit of a sweet tooth, right? But it's a healthy sweet. And within that, you've got to get the ice cream out of the house too. So you can't, as you're doing this, you want to be like, okay, I have to get rid of the ice cream.
Yeah. So I think that brings up a really good point of when we talk about sobriety versus recovery and then the difference between the behaviors in the two. So when we're talking about sobriety, we always reiterate that we think guardrails are important and that we should set them as high as physically possible to help us not do the thing that we don't want to do.
Right.
And when you're living in recovery, that you are more focused on, and this is sort of what we're talking about today, crowding out the things you don't want with things that are better for you, things that are healthier for you. And you're filling your time with those things. And so it's just a different mindset. It's not that you still don't have some of the guardrails up, but in the using ice cream as a silly example, it's not exactly the same as addiction, for example, because you could bring it back into the house at some point.
Right.
But you may just find that you crave the replacement more and more and more because it's healthier for you, it's better for you, it's helped you reach your goals. And then occasionally maybe it's a really hot day and you're like, I could really use some ice cream. Right. And you go for it because it's not causing harm. Now in the situation of things causing harm, that would be something that never comes back into the house, right? And so, I think that's a good reminder that we do want to remove the thing that we're trying to avoid. But in some cases, it's not even, when you're talking about habits and replacements or goals that we have, sometimes it's not even getting rid of something. Sometimes it's just bringing something in. And it's the same thing though. So if you did it with exercise as an example, you'd be replacing, non-exercise or time doing nothing with exercise, right? So you're not necessarily getting rid of a thing other than empty time or doing nothing, or maybe it's scrolling or whatever that might be. Your intention is actually to bring something positive in. But the same pattern would still be important because what does your downtime do for you? Why do you like to scroll, or why do you like to sit there doing nothing? What does that offer you? Well, maybe it offers you relaxation. Well, if you're going to go replace all of your downtime by practicing for a 5K or a marathon or whatever, and you don't have any downtime, that's probably not going to work for you. You're going to need to find a way that you replace relaxation. So does that mean you have to, schedule massages, or does that mean you have to really be careful with, I'm not going to do this training 7 days a week. I'm only going to do it 3 or 4 days a week, right? So that I can still really schedule things that bring that relaxation or recovery time in. So it really, my point in introducing these with sort of basic life things is just to sort of introduce the idea that it really doesn't matter what we're talking about. It can work with anything in our lives that we want to change.
Yeah.
And I think the key that a lot of us miss is taking that time to identify what our current state is giving us.
Right.
Because we work and we function in a way where our brain is going to go towards what it finds beneficial. So our current patterns are offering us some benefit.
Yeah.
And we just need to identify what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also as you're working through what that particular thing is doing for you and what the replacements are going to be, it could be a little bit of a journey. So if you say, well, social media has given me relaxation and the ability to numb out after a stressful day, and you go, I know what I'll do. I'll replace it with reading, right? So then you start reading, in my case, like military history. Well, some of military history is really dark, and then you're like, well, that wasn't relaxing at all. So maybe you got to find something else. So the point is you've got to be curious in that as you kind of, and like the example I gave about fruit, you may get to the end of the day and be like, well, I'm going to have my cool, fresh fruit. And you're like, I hate this. And so like you might need to say, okay, this isn't what I was looking for. Maybe it's, I don't know, liquid IV or something like that in a cold glass, because that actually has the right level of sweetness for you or something like that. So my point is you got to kind of have an open mind and keep going.
And I think too, when it does have to do with things that are actually negative behaviors, recognize that the beginning period of time, when we're talking about addiction and things that are more serious than the examples we've given, there will be that period of time when you're moving through sobriety before you get into recovery, where you go through withdrawal. And the replacements don't feel as good right away because your brain has essentially been hijacked. When you're talking about things with addiction, the difference between when I'm talking about the patterns all being the same, it's true. And when you're talking about things like addiction, there is a difference in the sense that there's time that has to be given for your brain chemicals to recalibrate and come back down into normal, so that then the things that are really healthy can be pleasurable and good again. And then over time, your brain relates to them in a more positive way than the negative, hijacked, hyperactive stress response that it gets from things that are pulled into addictive patterns. So that is like another difference between sobriety and recovery. But on a small scale, you'll feel the same thing with things like food, because our brain tend to go towards habits and patterns and familiarity. And so they're, even with something, as common as caffeine, people will experience withdrawal from that. Right. People will experience cravings if they give up chocolate or sugar or caffeine. So the patterns are generally the same. Like I'm saying, there's parallels and similarities between all of it. The motivation of why you're making the change has to be there. The understanding of what the original pattern has offered you has to be there. And then generally, it's more beneficial to crowd it out with something that is good for you, because then you end up liking that thing. Yeah. And so let's give some actual like addiction and betrayal examples. So can you maybe give a specific example to your recovery? Yeah.
So, my acting out pattern was the morning, right? That's generally when the majority of my acting out happened. And so, you as you and I were talking about this podcast, you were like, well, what do you think the morning was doing for you? And I think, or the morning acting out was doing for you. And I think probably what it was just processing through the events of the prior 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever that were, and whatever painful events they were, or I was feeling out of sorts or whatever, and I didn't want to feel it. So then, that's what came in. So obviously, as soon as I get discovered, everything's gone, right? Because of high boundaries and high barriers to that have gone into place. And so what I started to do was the faster scale was a fantastic exercise for me because I could spend that time in the morning looking at the faster scale really in an in-depth way and saying, okay, where am I feeling right now? Because very much so, my emotions, they went up and down. They really did. I started feeling the feels. And so I was trying to put a name to it, so if it was anxiety, which of the 12 categories that are inside of anxiety was I feeling? Or if it was forgetting priority or speeding up or whatever that was, what was I doing? So I was using that time to do that. And then I was, journaling as well and using that time to kind of put my thoughts down to paper and kind of say, hey, didn't feel good yesterday. Kylene had some questions for me last night that really drove me down into shame, or man, I don't know if I can answer these questions, or, like there was a lot that I was just putting to paper, and it was a good exercise for me to get all that emotion out. Now, the other thing I'd always been a working out guy, but what had happened was the addiction started to supersede the working out. And so I ended up becoming and utilizing some tools. And recently I found one that is well thought out for me. So the workout, I don't have to think about it in the morning. I get up in the morning, I press play, and they've already thought everything out for me. So all I got to do is show up in shorts and a t-shirt, right? And so those things in the morning have replaced, what was addiction. So it's time to reflect, it's time to read, it's time to exercise. And so those have become, and I always felt good exercising, but the dopamine hits, I guess you could argue, from the addiction far superseded the dopamine hits I was getting from exercise. So as the inability to engage in the addictive behavior went away, the dopamine hit that I achieved from working out and running is the high now. It's the high, and it feels great. And it's because my whole system has been recalibrated now into a more realistic system. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Imagine if you didn't have those resources, and between those hours, you were just like sitting there thinking about not engaging the behavior.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, you'd probably be white knuckling at that point, and you'd be in such distress. You'd be ungrounded. You would be activated. You would be all of those things that you'd be flailing, possibly, and things like that. So yeah, it's really, and I was actually thinking, it's funny you say that. So I traveled for work this week, and I had a really tough emotional week, and it was due to lack of sleep and some work stress, and some old memories came back of some of the behaviors that I had done. And that Thursday I was on like 2 hours of sleep, and I felt really bad about it. And I kind of spiraled a little bit, but nothing. Through the whole process, though, I was never afraid that I was going to do anything bad. And as a matter of fact, it's funny because in here and in hotels, the routine is so comforting because I have my 2 journals sitting there. I make 2 cups of coffee because in the room it has the where you can select 2. I make 2 cups. So I work out. I make my 2 cups of coffee. I go over and I set it next to my little journal, and I sit down and I put my feet up. And it's like it's the same in every single hotel I go to. And there's so much comfort in that routine, even though I'm suffering from lack of sleep and I've got some really tough emotions kind of surging through, or I'm facing a really stressful work situation. Like those routines provide a high level of comfort for me. And so it's just and of course it's been 5.5 years, right, to create those routines. But I remember those routines having a real positive effect on me early on too. Like once I was actually cleaning while you were gone. I was cleaning the.
When I leave the house, Patrick is like, "Mr. Get it done." He did so many big projects the past couple weeks. Yeah. I came home and it was like, "This project's done. This project's done. This project's done." I'm like, "Okay, thank you."
Yeah. More importantly, I hung up the "Go Army, Beat Navy" flag in the garage.
Yeah. Best thing you did.
I was going through and I was kind of organizing some of my. I had a shelf in my office that has a bunch of addiction recovery and stuff. And I was laughing because I was kind of organizing And the number of filled out journals that was in there, I was like, I think there was 7 Conquer journals. So that's 70 weeks of journals. And then I had some like 3 or 4 more standalone journals that I had like filled out.
Well, and
the
some
years.
of those are like 3-year journals.
Yeah, yeah.
And some of them are
I was
on
like,
top of that. Yeah.
I was like, wow. I mean, that had
Or 5-year
really,
journals. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that had really become a process for me. And so, but I always, when I pack, I pack my journals. It's just, so the whole system now that I have developed is designed to get me back to a state of where I can check in and I can become grounded again. And that even includes the workouts I do. So everything is designed to bring me back to center, I guess would be the best way to say it.
So maybe talk about, because you mentioned spiraling a little bit. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so I have a little bit of ear to my throat.
She's just getting really emotional for my story.
Right. So you were talking about spiraling emotionally. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about how you got out of that this week, or maybe not how you got out of it, but what did you do in those moments?
So I think what I've learned is I never hold it in. So meaning as I'm thinking it through, because I in the groups that I run, we're all on a group chat. So, generally I'm the leader, so I will probably send the fewest things, but when I'm having a tough time emotionally, I will express it in the group chat. So that's number one. I just express it in the group chat. Number 2, when you and I got on the phone, I expressed it to you. And I think sometimes I got to be careful because you always want to help me so much that a lot of times when I do this, I do it not because I need help, but because I understand the danger of keeping.
You just want to say it out loud.
Right. As soon as
to keep me informed.
Right. As soon as I express something, normally the power of it kind of goes down, right? Like in my case, the big thing I was feeling, amongst other things, but the big thing I was feeling is how I had kind of, during initial discoveries, I had kind of thrown Keegan under the bus. Like maybe he had, and that just made me feel so horrible because my whole life had been about protecting Keegan, right? I had structured my whole life to make sure he was taken care of. But it shows you the power of addiction on the brain, because in that moment, it was a tool or it was a thing that I pulled out there. And for whatever reason, 2 hours of sleep or whatever, it came into my brain on the way to work that morning and just made me feel like a real big POS. You know what I mean? And I was just like, how could I have done that? And then that kind of, how could I have done this? And then I was telling you, I walked into my hotel room and the TVs were on, like, oh, welcome to the Hilton, Mr. Terhune. And I have to turn off the TVs. And then, of course, that made me feel bad because, like, TVs is worth, you know what I mean? And I was like, everything was like, rah, So number 1, expressing it. And then number 2, when I checked in on the faster scale, I really spent a lot of time. I didn't just check blocks. I really, opened up and expanded the definition of each of the categories and said, was I replaying old negative thoughts? Was I, feeling deep shame? Was I where was I? I was trying to check everything that I had been feeling in the last 24 to 48 hours. I was really kind of going and normally when I feel great, every morning I get up every morning, I open up the faster scale, like recovery, boop, block checked, I'm good. I just move on. But when I'm feeling the emotions, I spend a lot of time trying to name it, put it there, kind of understand why. And then, who knows why it came up this week? I mean, did I eat something bad the night before and then I got no sleep? So then my whole system was like, boop, you know what I mean? Those things can happen. I was even telling you, like at one point I was like, I don't necessarily lend a lot of credence to that, but was this a spiritual attack? Because it was so intense, you know what I mean? So anyway, those are the things that I did. And the groups came through, you came through, everybody kind of came through saying, hey, are you okay? And I was fine. I knew I would be fine because I knew at this stage of my recovery, I was never going to do anything. But I was just, fine. And finally, it was like, hey, I need to go to bed. I need to get some sleep.
Yeah. So I think what you basically you really early on, we knew what you wanted to change.
Mm-hmm.
You took some time to figure out why you were engaging in the behaviors and the wounding points and the traumas in your life and the beliefs, the negative self-beliefs you had. And you did a lot of that work early on, like in the first year and such. And then long term, I mean, it happened very quickly, but you've continued to build on that. And again, I want to kind of revisit that idea of sobriety versus recovery. You did all the sobriety tools right away. You did all of this right away. But over the past 5.5 years, it's continued to build so deeply into recovery. And now it's this huge thing where it's an automatic thing for you. When I'm feeling emotions, these are the tools that I have that I engage in.
Right.
This is how I do this. And so that goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. You've crowded out the bad with so much good. You've crowded out the bad with things that feel grounding, with things that help you make sense of your emotions, with people and community that help you feel connected and resourced and supported. You've connected with things that help you process your emotions and name them and identify, like, why am I feeling this way, and organize your brain a little bit. You tell me, like, you just have all of these habits and patterns now that fill up your mornings on a regular basis.
Right.
And then when you're feeling stressed, it's like an automatic reflex. Would you say at this point, and I didn't ask you this before the podcast, so I don't really know the answer. Would you say at this point that your reflex to do those things is as easy or strong as your old reflex to act out?
Oh, yeah. Well, and actually you can argue this way, like it's even stronger because there's no angst, there's no moral quandary, there's no, you know what I mean? Like I always struggle with that. You know, it was like, you get up in the morning, you're like, okay, I'm not going to act out this morning. And then you're like, there it goes. And so there's no moral equivocation about saying I'm going to check in on the faster scale. It's the absolute right thing to do.
Well, back to the example that you just gave of like internal conflict around acting out, like of the idea. And I think I remember asking you this really early on. I was trying to understand, like, what in the world happens in the morning that like takes you to that place. And you were like, literally just like an idea would pop in my brain, or like a trick, like a image or trigger or whatever it was like some sort of bloop, and that's the idea has been planted or whatever. And so if you go all the way back to like that concept, at that time, that was kind of the focus on the elephant in the room situation. Well, now the idea's in my head. Now I have the pattern that's really, really familiar. I have the train tracks that are really, really worn in my brain. I don't have anything else planned. I don't have anything else to go to. I don't have anything else that offers me that solution. I don't have these other things to focus on. I don't have a replacement thought. So then all I'm going to do, if anything, is struggle against the thought, which means I'm thinking about the thought, which means I'm focused on doing the thing that I don't want to do, which means ultimately I'm probably going to do it.
That's right. Yeah.
I'll sit there in misery until I go to work.
Yeah. Or maybe, if I get the workout in, that's great, and I break the cycle that day, right? But it's not a permanent solution. Right. Yeah, because I would say that's the difference. It's like these habits that I talk about, the 2 cups of coffee and the journals and sitting there and picking them up. I mean, they're so automatic.
Right. And I would say maybe let's talk about the time in between. So when we're talking about sobriety moving into recovery, you that wasn't necessarily like super easy early on, right? When you started connecting to group, when you started connecting to therapy, you got all these resources. It probably felt a little bit, I don't know if this is the right way to describe it, but a little bit like a long list of like things like, oh, here's the thing. And I know you were kind of excited to do them because you're like, whatever it takes, I want to recover. I'll do this. But what I guess I'm trying to get at is the first months, it wasn't as easy it is now. It was you were still worried about relapsing. You were still, the brain hadn't healed yet. You were you were replacing, but it wasn't I'm sure it wasn't 100% a relaxing thing like it is now, right? So there is that phase where you do the thing because you know that it's the right thing to do and ultimately it's going to have a benefit, and because you've identified it as something that's going to help you crowd out the thing you don't want. But over time, as you move through sobriety and into recovery, once you've clicked into recovery, your brain is rebalanced, and then you start to feel the actual tangible benefit of these things.
Right.
And then the thing I think sometimes we try to emphasize in these episodes and on this podcast that I don't know that we always do the best job of, but is that not doing the behavior is not the end of the line. Getting into recovery isn't the end of the line. Once you get into the recovery, it's like, welcome to the rest of your life.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. We want you to get into recovery, which is feeling freedom from those things, crowding out the bad with the good so much that you love the good so much that you're focused on the good, that it's as natural as the bad pattern. We want you to kind of get into that place and then feel so good about it that you're like creating this life and this version of yourself that you love. And because from that place, that's the new version of you that keeps growing. The self-growth thing is like a forever thing.
Yeah.
And so when people talk about, recovery as a lifelong thing, that's what we mean when we say recovery, at least what we mean when we say recovery is a lifelong thing. And I hope you can hear from that. What we don't mean is lifelong recovery means focusing on not doing the bad behavior.
Yeah.
We're so far beyond that when you get to the place of recovery.
That's right.
Sobriety is you start out not doing the thing, but you want to so quickly replace it with focusing on the things you do want to do, the version of yourself that you do want to become, creating that version, being proud of yourself, becoming in alignment and living in integrity. And then you have self-confidence, and that starts to replace the not enoughness that led into the negative beliefs that led into the self-medication, right? So recovery, when we say it's a lifelong thing, that's what we mean.
Yeah.
Is that it is this ongoing, this is again, when I say for every single human being, we just might use a different word for it. So an addict might say recovery is a lifelong thing. Someone that was never an addict might say, yeah, I have this personal growth journey that I've been on for the past 5 years, right? Yeah. And that should be basically until we die, that we're learning new things, that we're growing, that we are developing more integrity, that we become more and more the person that does the things that we want to do, that fills our lives with things that bring health to myself and to others, that fill the world with positivity, that help other, all of these good things, right? Yeah. And so that's, I don't know, that's a little bit of a tangent, but that's kind of what I always want to reiterate that, because sometimes in the recovery world, that messaging gets lost, and they hear so often that recovery is this lifelong thing, and it can feel so much like a heaviness. It can feel so much like, well, that means I'm going to struggle forever. And when we say recovery is lifelong, that's not what we mean. Recovery is the first day that you're living in freedom from the bad thing, from the thing that you don't want, from the version of yourself that you don't like. And from there, you really get to just build on it forever and ever and ever. And that's a good thing. That's a place that you want to be. That's a place that you want to live in forever. It's not living on the struggle bus forever. It's continually changing and evolving and growing and creating a version of yourself and a life around you that you like and that you want.
Well, I think good recovery builds traits in you that you otherwise would not have thought of. So it builds resilience, it builds patience, it builds perseverance, it builds empathy, it builds all of these things that you kind of don't think about when you start down the recovery side. And when you talk about emotions, the one of the most effective ways to learn how to life is when you go through something and you go, hey, I didn't die. I actually made it through that. So the first time you really start feeling your emotions is you're going through withdrawal, and you recognize, oh, I didn't act out. I woke up the next day and I'm okay. And so even this week when I was when I was struggling a little bit, I knew I was going to get through it. I knew I was going to be fine. Because I had learned that through 5.5 years of recovery. So my resilience was really, really high. I was just emotional, and I was allowing my emotions to range a little bit. I wasn't squelching them. I wasn't, you know what I mean? And then,
well, it's learning that the emotions are not bad.
That's right. So I've learned a lot of that stuff, through the years. And so the other part of that, through recovery, when you would say, hey, this, just thinking about the behavior hurts my feelings, and I always say, well, it should hurt your feelings because it wasn't good. That's that. I don't get defensive. I don't
Right.
get triggered. I don't get activated. I just say, no, you should, because it was horrible. It was
Right.
bad.
Well, it's like when you were telling me this past week that you were like, when when that thing about Keegan came up and you're like, I feel really sad about it. I said the same thing. I'm like, you should feel sad about it. To me, that's a good sign of recovery.
Right.
Because when you're living in addiction, you had so many, why did you engage in that in the first place? Because you had so much self-denial and so many qualifications and so much self-lying at that point that it led you to do things that you would never, ever otherwise do.
Right.
It led you to make decisions that you today, the further away we get from the darkness and the more we stand in the light, the more the darkness seems abhorrent.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're living in the darkness, you're like, the light is like too bright for my eyes, or it seems scary.
Oh, yeah.
But when the more you live in the light and you absorb it into all of your cells and, you get all the goodness from it, then you look back and you're like, that was horrid. And the further, that's what we mean, the further you get into recovery, the more, it's not just, I'm not struggling with that thing. You turn around and you're like, man, I can't believe I did that. It makes me so sad. So when you tell me, I had this thing where I remember this bad thing that I did and I have so much grief over it, to me, that's like such a great thing, because good people that have done bad things should feel sad about the bad things they've done. You know what I mean? And
that's right. Yeah.
That's to me an indication of recovery. It's like when I talk to betrayed partners, this bad thing has happened to us. Healing and getting into a place of recovery doesn't mean that someday I'm going to think about the infidelity or the negative behaviors and not go, oh, that really hurts my feelings. It'll always hurt my feelings. If I sit here and dwell on it, I will get sad about it. It will hurt my feelings because it was bad.
Right.
This bad thing happened. We can never erase that happened, but we can learn how to create a life after that bad thing has happened.
Yeah.
And if we reconcile, we can, work on the trust and recreate a relationship. And all the same things apply to betrayed partners as well, and every single human, which is, how do I create a life that I want? How do I create a version of myself that I'm proud of? And it's the same steps, right? We have to identify like what's going on that we don't like. We have to understand what our behaviors or our patterns or our responses are offering to us. And then we have to choose an alternative that is healthier, that answers those same issues in our life. Right. So if something, for example, is offering us a sense of security or a sense of control or a sense of stability, but maybe it's in an unhealthy pattern, like I'm trying to micromanage your life, for example, and let's say you've been in recovery for like 3 years, and I have a habit of like reading every page of your journal or checking your every single email, or it's just like a hyperactivity that's like not healthy at that level of recovery and not necessary based on where you're at in your recovery. Yeah. So those don't match, right? So there's a level of unhealth there. Okay, well then I'd have to go, well, why am I doing that? Well, I don't feel secure or safe, and that offers me or some form or perception of safety. Okay, well, have I ever done trauma work? Have I ever worked on my fear of the shoe dropping? Have I ever worked on my feelings of insecurity with whatever it might be, who I am as a partner, or my body image, or comparison, or whatever the wounding is for me personally? Have I done the work to heal that, right? And if not, maybe that's where I need to go. Have I talked to people? Talking, like you just said a minute ago, saying things out loud often dissipates the energy for you.
Right.
And that's a human thing. Often when we say something out loud, like let's say you have like this really scary thing, sometimes saying it out loud, you're like, oh, in my head that was so scary, but saying it out loud, it sounds so stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it just doesn't sound real. Like all of a sudden it takes the energy away from it, right? Like that fear that I had when I say it out loud to another human being, I'm like, oh, that sounds dumb, doesn't it? And so do we talk to people? Are we in support groups? Do we have a therapist? Do we have a friend? Do we have a family member? Like, are we isolating as betrayed partners, right? Yeah. Because if we isolate as betrayed partners, we can be swimming through a mountain of mud that you can't really get out of. And then what are we going to do? We're going to have to come up with some sort of coping mechanism, not to feel that, not to, deal with that, right? So it's the same process, regardless of who we are or what our situation is. There are people out there that have the healthiest marriages in the whole world, and they have really horrible life habits, right? Like maybe they smoke 3 packs a day, or maybe whatever it is. Everybody has something. So it's really not. It is about addiction. It is about betrayal. It is about trauma. It is all these things, and also it's just about the human experience.
Yeah.
And how do we become better humans. We become better humans by taking the time to do the self-reflection, to understand why we engage in the behaviors that we engage in. What is this thing doing for me? What is it? How does it make me feel?
Right.
What is it offering? What gap in my life maybe is it filling? And by the way, be careful when you answer those questions not to shift blame to somebody else. So for example, if the answer to that question is, well, I'm lonely or I feel disconnected, don't blame other people for that loneliness or that disconnection. Well, my friend doesn't reach out to me, or my wife doesn't, blah, 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 or my husband doesn't, right? There are relational things that sometimes need to be addressed. But when we're talking about our own personal, quote unquote, needs, wants, woundings, pain points, that is still something within us that needs to be addressed.
Right.
So, like, for example, do I need to call my friend? Right? Or am I totally just expecting that it's a one-sided thing where they always think of me, right? It's important that I check in. Now, there have been situations, and I've been in these, where I was the person that was calling all the time. And then I had to reassess the opposite way and be like, that's not fulfilled. I'm feeling you could say lonely in a sense because they're not reciprocating the relationship. I'm not feeling valued in that relationship because I'm the one giving all the time, right? So it doesn't matter which direction it goes. Make sure you're taking the time to do the self-reflection of like, where am I with this?
Yeah.
What's my wounding? And then you can come up with the action step. Do I need to be the person to call and reach out because I'm feeling lonely? Or alternatively, do I have this relationship where I'm feeling lonely because I'm giving everything and they're giving nothing, and I need to set a boundary there, right? So there's not, in these examples, a quote unquote right or wrong. It's situationally dependent, but the process is going to be the same for everybody.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking about that, you're like, why in the friendship thing, like why what need are you is being either fulfilled or not fulfilled by getting triggered by a friend that either doesn't reach out or like is it are you evaluating it objectively, which is sometimes hard in relationship.
Oh, it's super hard.
Yeah.
I mean, this. I've been in situations where I felt like a relationship was really, really deep in one way. And then what you're bringing up is like, I would feel very emotionally triggered because it felt very unstable when I started realizing that it was a one-sided relationship and that I wasn't really being reciprocated. And so where is that? Because if I zoom out, and once you process everything and you zoom out and you can look at it from a neutral way, you're like, people, it's okay. It's really okay. People they heal at different rates. They go through life experiences at different rates. They move on. You live in different areas.
For a time.
You live in different areas.
Yep.
They maybe found another friend that they're closer to or whatever, and it's okay. But in the middle of the processing part, it can feel very emotionally triggering, right?
Yeah.
And so you do kind of have to work through, like, what does that mean? Why am I feeling this way? And what can I do to move through it so that I don't every time I think about this person, feel triggered, that I can neutralize that energy and neutralize that emotion. And I remember years ago, just staying on the friend theme, years ago when we got married, I basically threw everything into this relationship because I was like, I'm so happy. And we were busy and I didn't feel like I needed anything. Well, 2 years into it, I was like, unintentionally self-isolating, and I was like, I'm kind of lonely and I need friends.
Yeah.
And then I remember being like, well, Kylene, if you want to have friends, you actually have to go to places.
People aren't just going to come knock on your door.
No, if you're invited to a group situation, you actually have to go.
Yeah.
You have to participate in the church event, And so at that time, I kind of identified, hey, I'm feeling, man, I don't really have friends. And then I was like, well, if I want friends, I have to say yes to stuff. And that's on me. That's on me to actually create this for myself. And so then I did, and I started, developing friendships again. And so it's not always that we get into things intentionally, right? I got married, I was really happy, I was focused on you and Keegan, and I didn't really feel like there was anything missing, right? Until 2 years later, and I was like, wait a second, I haven't invested in any friendships.
Yeah, right.
So it's not like I intentionally did that. But then at the point that we become aware that something's missing or that we want something to be added to our lives, that's when we want to engage in this process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is what is happening? How can I replace it? What's the action step that I need to take, right? Without really projecting that elsewhere. Because most of the time, with most situations in our lives, there's action steps that we can take. So we can always start with personal responsibility first.
Yeah.
And then, if a conversation maybe needs to be had or reconciliation of some sort or amends being made or, whatever that might look like, Then we can take that step, but let's start with us first.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So anything else in terms of the idea of crowding out?
I always want to give a nod to the 3 circles tool. That's an important recovery tool. And it's the one that has green activities and then, the yellow guardrails that go up and then the red activities that you aren't going to do that define like sobriety and recovery. And, they will always say this, if you have more activities in your red circle than you have in your green circle, you got to rethink that. Because you should have more activities in your green positive circle. These are the activities that you want to engage in that keep you happy, that keep you grounded, that keep you connected.
For Patrick, that's playing Lego, that's buying Lego, that's going to the Lego store.
Yep, so that's 3. Yep, there they are.
It's seeing a helicopter in the sky.
There it is.
It's flying helicopters. It's building Lego helicopters.
Yeah. See how we can combine all those green activities? The red activity is when you tell me I'm not allowed to buy a Lego helicopter.
No more Lego.
Yeah. So, but seriously, it's like, you want to have your green activities want to far outstrip your red activities. And so
outweigh, you mean?
Sorry, yes, outweigh or far outnumber, right? You always want to be, everything you could, and it might be hard initially, but you want to continue to kind of say, okay, what activities do I like? And, we were joking about Lego. That was actually a post-recovery
That was a reclamation.
That came in, because oddly, that's the story. I got exposed for the first time going to play Legos with a friend, right? So it was a way to kind of restore that and
bring back the innocence.
Right. As I've grown through recovery, I'm like, well, it's a fun habit. It's fun, and there's nothing wrong with it. And so
yeah. What's a way to focus your brain with something you enjoy that takes up time and is a neutral to benefit activity. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay.
No.
Yeah, I think it's just the concept we want to leave you with is take the time to think about. I love that you just said that with the green, yellow, and red. We're gonna drop we've made a podcast episode about the 3 circles, so I'll make sure that's in the show notes as well. We've also made one about the faster scale. I'll make sure that's in the show notes as well. But really, to start today, you could just think about those 3 steps. You could just think about what's going on in my life that I either want to add something in that's good or take something out that's bad. Think about the gap that's there, what the activity is doing for you, and then what might actually help you replace that in a healthy way.
Right.
Patrick, I noticed that you picked up your notes because you are going to say the outro today. You're prepared. I love it. Good job.
Yes, I am. Every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we'll see you next week.
Great job. Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.